Hey everybody, it's Taylor with Boydston Grove, and today we're gonna make an astronaut coin bank. Let's get into it.
That is so cool!
Now I know that I've made coin banks before. I made this illusion one not that long ago, and some of you might remember when I made this dino one a while back. But when the idea for this astronaut popped in my head, I couldn't help myself. I just had to make one. I'm using some scraps of 3/4 inch plywood and a piece of 1/2 inch plywood for this project. I printed out the template and traced it onto the wood using the 1/2 inch plywood for the back piece. After cutting them out, I drilled some holes to be able to cut out the centers of the front piece and the middle piece. Then I used a 1.5 inch Forstner bit to drill out the hole in the back piece. With a 1/2 inch plunge bit in my router, I wallowed out the inside area of the front piece. Now I didn't make the astronaut perfectly symmetrical, so when you're wallowing out the section of the front piece, you want to make sure that you're doing it on the back side of the piece. That way when you're attaching all the pieces of the astronaut together, they'll line up with one another. I also used the router to make a notch in the top of the middle piece that will become the slot to insert the money. For assembly, I use glue and brad nails. You probably could skip the nails if you had the patience to clamp up the pieces and wait for them to dry, but I do not. As you can see, I wasn't paying very close attention when spreading the glue. What a mess. Fortunately, the rest of the pieces went together without a hitch. To create a little backpack for the astronaut, I cut a piece of 2x4 to 5.5 inches long. Then I used a jig on my table saw to make a steep angled cut. I have a full vid on how to make this jig if you're interested. I'll leave a link in the description. I used my bench sander to round over all the corners and give it some shape. I cut a 1.5 inch circle out of some 1/2 inch plywood and attached it 1 3/4 inch up from the bottom of the backpack. I also added a short piece of 1/4 inch dowel for an antenna. I made sure to cut the circle just a little bit big so I could sand it down and get a nice snug friction fit. Now it's starting to look like something. I plan to use plexiglass for the front visor of the astronaut, so following the second line around the head of the template, I used my router to create a little rabbet so I could inset the plexiglass. With all that done, it was time for paint. I used some craft paint to add some details. And I also printed some images on some label paper and cut them out to stick them onto the astronaut. Last but not least, I used E6000 to attach the visor. Alright, our astronaut coin bank is finished. Let's go over a few things real quick. Starting with this backpack, using it for the back plug worked out really well. I kept it just large enough that it's a really nice, snug, friction fit so that I don't have to worry about it popping off or anything. One adjustment that I did have to make is I ended up sanding the feet so that the astronaut tips forward a little bit, because I realized that when I attached the backpack and the astronaut was standing straight up and down, the weight of the backpack, because it's a 2x4, made the whole thing want to tip backward. So I just took a little off the feet and made it tip forward, and it works perfectly fine now. I went with just the traditional white astronaut, but you can have fun with yours. Paint it some cool color like a deep blue or maybe a silver. I think the stickers really added a lot to this. In fact, I went ahead and added the one for the belt into the template for the astronaut. I did not, however, add these stickers for the NASA logos because of copyright issues. If you're interested in making this little astronaut for yourself, I have a full set of plans on our website. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description below. And if you want to check out the other coin banks that we built, I'll make sure to leave links to those videos also. All in all, this was a super fun project, and it makes a really cool coin bank. I hope you all enjoyed this week's project. Thank you very much for watching, be safe, and have a great day.